Glass of water. You can take it as you want. Hello everyone. Bienvenue, bonjour. Okay, so this conference is going to be in English, but ok, petit sondage. Qui ne parle pas très bien anglais ici? Levez la main. Ok. Who's English and doesn't really speak French here? Ok. It doesn't matter because this conference is in English. So, donc, si jamais vous avez besoin d'un casque de traduction, ils sont au fond, là-bas, et donc Cléo et Lila pourront vous en donner. Ils sont désinfectés entre chaque utilisation, je le précise, c'est important. Et donc, quand vous avez le casque audio, vous l'ouvrez et tout de suite, il marche directement. Vous tapez sur la chaîne 3 pour avoir la traduction en français. For English translations, which is not on this conference, it will be channel 4, literally. Quite funny. Vous tournez la molette pour le volume. Faut bien mettre sur le canal 3 parce que si vous êtes sur d'autres canaux, vous allez entendre les traductions d'autres conférences du MAMA, ce qui n'est pas vraiment pratique pour écouter celle-ci. Okay, donc, c'est au fond là-bas. Et une fois que la conférence est terminée, vous pouvez les ramener. Juste une question importante. Si jamais, à la fin, au moment des questions, vous avez envie de poser une question et que vous ne vous sentez pas de la poser en anglais, it's okay. Vous pouvez la poser en français et je donnerai les casques de traduction. Alors, Francine, elle parle français. Elle est très forte. Mais Cameron et Jenna, ils ne parlent pas forcément français, donc ils pourront, on leur filera le casque de traduction et ils pourront écouter votre question en français traduite. OK ? Super. Pour les personnes qui sont au fond, bienvenue. N'hésitez pas à voir s'il y a une place là où elle est prise. Elle est prise, pardon. Si vous voyez des places un petit peu. Mais si vous restez au fond, vous êtes les bienvenus. Mais juste essayez de vous assurer que vous n'êtes pas dans le champ de traduction de Meredith et Lester, qui sont nos traducteurs et traductrices de ce jour. Voilà. Est-ce qu'il y avait des questions? Non. I think, let me just check the time. Do you want to start 3 minutes early? Go for it. It's full anyway, so go for it. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Cool. Lovely to see so many of you here. Thank you all very much for coming out. My name is Francine Gorman. I am freshly arrived off of a very early Eurostar this morning, so if I say anything a bit strange, I'm just a bit tired. But it's lovely to be here at MAMA. Very much looking forward to having this chat on the panel today. And as Emily just said in the introduction, there will be a little bit of time towards the end of this session if you want to ask any questions. So I'll just get everybody sort of up to speed with what it is that we're going to be talking about over the next hour, and then I'll get my fantastic panelists to introduce themselves here. But yeah, we're going to be talking about superfans, which has been the hottest word in music marketing for probably the last 3 or 4 years. So within my consultancy company that I run, I'm a journalist, so I work a lot with music marketing press, and we've been writing about superfans for quite a while, but just over the last year, it's really become so central to so many different parts of the industry, to so many future plans for the industry. So that's why we're going to be having a chat about it today. Just to give you a few numbers to get started with here. So there was a Goldman Sachs report that came out earlier this year. It's called Music in the Air, and it's a very interesting report to have a look at. But they stated that die-hard supporters who spend on merch, concerts, vinyl, and exclusive content could generate an additional $4.3 billion per year by 2026, and possibly $6.6 billion per year by 2035. So that's superfans that we're talking about, and this additional investment in products, in tickets, in all of the things that they're wanting to spend money on as huge fans of an artist. So economically, there are huge things that could happen if you treat your superfans correctly. There's another great report from Luminate that shows that superfans actually just make up about 20% of listening audiences on streaming services. But those 20% of listeners are super engaged, and they will spend more, they'll spend disproportionately, so they'll spend more money than the more passive listeners. And an example that they shared was that they spend 66% more money on live music, so on tickets and the merch and everything that surrounds it. So it's a smaller group within the listening pool, but it's the super dedicated ones that really want to invest in the artists that they love. And then major labels have been investing in platforms, and they've been investing in apps to really super serve these super fans. And platforms like Discord and Weverse by Hybe, they're all thriving spaces where superfan communities are developing themselves. So we'll dip into all of these conversations, all of these different sort of ways of thinking about things. And we're going to try and come away from this conversation with some really practical tips and steps as well. So how you can really incorporate this thinking and this strategy into the work that you're all doing in the industry. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce the two fantastic panelists that we have here today. Or I'll let you introduce yourselves, actually. And if I could ask you a starter question, we'll go with you, Jeanette, first. How does your sector define a superfan?
At least just to introduce myself. So I'm Janet Berrios. I'm the VP of Corporate Marketing for Symphonic Distribution. We're an independent music distributor and music marketing company. We focus a lot in terms of providing tools, resources for artists to essentially kind of take their careers into their own hands. In the position that I have itself, we kind of focus on kind of like the global brand. And also we have a really big focus on community as well. And a lot of education, just kind of like educating our client base in terms of like how they can essentially empower themselves through the career. So in terms of how we in our sector, how we see it, obviously we come from a space of digital, right? Because we're a digital distributor, so we're going to be constantly kind of looking at the platforms and all the tools that the platforms have, which coincidentally in this day and time, like we are seeing that there's a lot of now community features, right, that these platforms have. YouTube has had it for a while. Now Spotify has come out with like their new tool that you can see through their Spotify for Artists. So we are going to come from it, from a perspective of trying to create marketing plans for our clients that focus and incorporate those tools, and also in general just educating everybody in the process of like what to do, what are the best practices, how can you engage further with your community. We understand that as a distributor too, payouts sometimes aren't that great, right? All these DSPs have their, obviously their payouts that tend to be lower. So it is really important for artists to be able to engage with these communities, right? And be able to like foster their audiences, because obviously based on what you're saying too, with like the research from Goldman Sachs, it's a huge opportunity out there. Now there's enough information, to justify it. So I think like for us, it's basically around that essence of what opportunities the DSPs offer that can be maximized, and then also being able to educate folks on what they can be doing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And same question to you. How does your sector think of and contextualize superfans? And also, who are you and what do you do?
Hi guys, so I'm Cameron Addington Diseño. I'm A&R executive at American music finance and company Duetti. I'm also the UK lead at Duetti. And essentially, to answer your question, I feel like Duetti has a two-pronged perspective on what superfans means in the current music climate. What I mean when I say that is, I feel as though when people think of superfans, they think of it through a one-dimensional lens, when in reality, I feel like there's a new version of superfans that are emerging, who are people that are not necessarily loyal to specific artists, but they're loyal to an aesthetic or a vibe, for example. And then they try and find artists that serve that vibe or that aesthetic. And I feel like what we do at Duetti is we try and identify those people and what they want, and then try and serve them that through artists that we have catalogue for. So I feel as though that's super important. A bit more about Duetti itself. It was founded by a man called Leo Tibben. Leo was the former COO of the music financing company Tidal, and he left Tidal because he felt as though he wanted to empower independent artists more. So what we do at Duetti is we acquire catalogue. It could be an individual track from an artist, it could be their entire catalogue, and then we optimize that catalogue in new markets. And yeah, I feel that's a bit of an overview of me.
And do you want to just tell us a little bit more about the management as well?
Absolutely, apologies, that's on me. Yeah, so alongside that, I also manage a number of artists and producers across Europe. I feel as though from that perspective, my perspective on superfans is a bit more traditional, in a sense that they're people that we feel as though are committed to not only the music, but the identity and the brand of the artist. And it's about super serving them what they already want or what they already feel like they desire from that artist.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you both for being here and having this chat today. So we've kind of briefly touched on some of the potential economic benefits of having a really good superfan strategy. But just more generally, why do you think that this superfan conversation is so relevant at the moment? Why are we talking so much about superfans? Why are labels looking so closely into tools to be able to work with superfans? Why are they so relevant to what we're doing right now?
I would say primarily I feel as though it's because of the breakdown of the more traditional model to success as a musician that existed maybe in the early 2000s and beyond that. I feel as though today, because of globalization, because of social media, because of streaming platforms, there's a wealth of competition for artists. And because of that, it's kind of harder to have your voice heard. And a lot of the more traditional avenues to having success don't work in the same way that they did before. A label can't come to you today and say, we're going to make you a star tomorrow. They can try, but it's not guaranteed. And I feel like because of that, the most successful way to build a core audience for yourself is through leaning into super fandom.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And then, yeah, I think it's a layer of also having all this access to social media, right? We have all these different platforms that folks can engage with audiences, but I think that we've been doing it long enough that now it's like, okay, what's next? We're only, for the longest time, people have just been like speaking to the audience and not really engaging with them, right? So I think that we're seeing that there's a huge advantage of being able to connect and engage differently, with those audiences, and capitalizing on how we can then, I know we're going to talk about specifics in terms of like what to offer them, right? We don't want to be always constantly selling, but I feel like there's a huge advantage of being able to connect a little bit more now that especially, it is so global, right? And you can be, you could be here in Paris, but you can have a huge audience in Bogota, whatever that may mean. So I think that there's an opportunity there to connect with those people. I also feel that for the longest time too, and even maybe, I don't want to age myself, but maybe some of us growing up, we didn't have access to a lot of these artists, right? And how their lives looked, or any behind the scenes. We didn't have any access to that. You would just see them in a concert, maybe see them in TV, radio, listen to them on the radio, whatever it may be. But now we have further access, and by us understanding who they are, what they stand for, what they believe in, now there's even a deeper level of association that you can really connect with that, with that artist that you might have never met this person, but maybe you feel you have similar tastes, or you have things in common, or you really enjoy what they do. So I think that there's a huge opportunity there, now that we can connect kind of deeper. with, obviously with artists, or artists can connect deeper with their fans too, kind of make a movement out of it too.
I was writing an article about Superfans very recently, and I was talking to a couple of managers who had kind of seen their artists move across a number of different platforms. So, if the artists had been around for a long time, then maybe they started on MySpace, built up this huge fan base, which then disappeared with the platform, and then moved as many as they could to Facebook, and then people stopped using it and dripping off. And I think a lot of managers really appreciate having, and labels in the entire ecosystem, I think really appreciate having the opportunity to be able to build and keep that data of their fans and to keep that direct access to their fans in one safe, kind of semi-future-proofed place.
Yeah, that at least like you have the platform to promote yourself, but also I wonder too if there's like a space in there that, because you don't have ownership of so much of that information, right? You see these followers, obviously you have all these followers on YouTube, you may have all these like Spotify monthly listeners, but you don't have their information. So I think that also can be like a little scary piece of it. So I think, it's smart when people get really creative in ways of like, hey, how to get an email, how to get a phone number, so now you have ownership of that data versus, the DSPs.
Actually, to your point, Jeanette, so an artist that I managed previously, one way that we kind of subverted that was by creating a pop-up in a particular part of London and saying the only way you could sign up is via your email address. So that way we were able to get the email address of pretty much all of the people that were super engaged with his music and his content and his brand as a whole. And that sort of carried us through the days where maybe the algorithm shadow banned us on TikTok and we weren't getting as many views as before.
That's great too, because also too, a lot of those emails, the more emails you have, then you can build audiences. That's like a whole nother, space when it comes to like the marketing of it. So it's great to, at whatever stage you're at, to try to get creative on how you can capture somebody's email. There's platforms like MailChimp that have a lot of nice little tools that you can embed in your website, or share them in links, whatever it may be. But at any stage, trying to get that email. And if you do have the funds or the budget for it, an SMS, type of service, for any text messaging, that's great as well, because I feel like that's like another, like nice entry point, at least like for folks kind of like in the millennial kind of Gen Z kind of, age.
It is quite cool that we've had all these incredible, like, flashy platforms come along, but it's the email that's sustained. That's the one that's still the most powerful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, too, because I'm just kind of, a lot of other campaigns and ideas are coming through, but also, too, email, I feel like sometimes it sounds very corporate-y or salesy, but there are some artists that, that I've seen at least that have really personalized those emails, like in a really cool style of messaging. Sometimes even they'll send emails about holidays that you're like, oh, wow, but they sent me a Valentine's Day email or like a Merry Christmas one, but it fits their style. They can do that, because like according to, obviously it has to fit your brand and your voice, and it would come natural from you. But I think that you don't have to think about it as like such a sales tool that I was like, oh wow, a newsletter, what am I going to say here? But sneak it in there, like just like your personality and your brand.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit deeper then. Some of the good strategies that you've seen and that you've been involved with and that you think have been really successful. Have you got any kind of examples that spring to mind of people that are just engaging with this superfan audience really well so that we can all steal some ideas from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Duetti, we did a deal with an artist called Try Hard Ninja, apologies. And essentially, he's a gaming artist that caters towards the gaming community in America. And a lot of the content that he makes, a lot of the music that he makes as well, is themed around a particular movie. So what we did was we launched a campaign across social media, leaning into the content around that movie as much as we possibly could. And we managed to create a trend around the movie itself using all of his music. And through that, not to sound too numbers orientated, but we saw like a 10% uplift in streams across all platforms. it was really, really amazing, and he was super happy with us. It strengthened his relationship with us, and through that, he was able to build a deeper connection with his fandom, because the reason that his music referenced that movie was because he loved that movie and it meant something dear to him, and it meant something dear to the fans as well. So I feel like that was a good example of really building a connection with your super fans.
Yeah, an example that we have that it's kind of like a live example that's happening now, or like it's in progress. We just recently started distributing Imogen Heap, and she has an album that has a 20th anniversary. So smaller first layer was like, okay, Spotify has this thing called Fans First, that they'll essentially, if they identify that you have, I think it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you have these numbers fresh, but I think it's like if you have like your top 200 super fans, they will send an email out to those specific fans, and it's something that you can pitch through your distributor. And you can pitch any sort of content to them. Like, it can be any exclusive content that you want for those listeners. They will send out the email. But she created a specific vinyl for the anniversary. But then also those folks get invited to a listening party that she's doing, that she is basically going to create 11. This is like another level of budget, but at least I know a lot of us can be very resourceful, right? And we can come up with some creative ideas and have some friends that can maybe help you out along the way. But it's just, I'm referencing this because I've never had heard of something like this, of what she's doing, that essentially she's creating different rooms with experiences, that each room represents a specific song, right? Of what the visual that she had for that specific song. It also has a not only, obviously a sound associated with it, but she's also doing scents that are associated in each of the rooms. So I think that's just like holistically the whole experience. At the end of it, it's her explaining like the whole album, So I think it's something that it's going to be very beautifully done. It's like very thought out. But yeah, maybe that can offer as like experience, that's like an experience itself for the fans, to be able to, have a scent profile and the sounds that, like remind her of like each specific song. So I think it's something kind of like very cool. And that's specifically a client, right? But somebody I also think that's doing something really cool is Diplo. Do you guys obviously Diplo here? So Diplo's an electronic music producer, right? And he's always been, even though he's a DJ and he, you see that he travels the world and all this, he kind of has a little bit of a healthy lifestyle, right? And now he's getting a little bit older. He's probably maybe in his like mid 40s, and now he started the Diplo Run Club. It's a running club. And now, essentially, there are about like 20,000 people that show up to this run club because he himself has a pretty like healthy lifestyle, and he just kind of like has tapped on that. And yeah, you get invited to the run club. You run with Diplo. At the end, he does a set. It's like almost like a show itself. But I thought that was pretty smart, especially knowing that probably his audience is also a little bit older as well, that maybe they're not going to be going to a festival, at night and all this, but hey, maybe they may wake up early and go for a run, and then, maybe have a beer at the end of it or something, and you get to catch his music. So I think that he did a really smart job of, like, obviously, using that probably data points of, like, what his music is popular for, and like probably maximizing those like fans that probably are as well, like maybe a little bit on the healthier side as well. So I don't know.
But it's a super smart strategy if you can see that your audience demographic is shifting. Like you were saying, that Diplo's fans may want to go to festivals, but they might not want to spend their money on festival tickets or show tickets as much as they used to. However, by creating this super engaging idea and keeping in touch with everybody and making sure that he's still right in front of them all the time, he's just running now.
Yeah,
that's really clever.
And when you're going to go to I think he does like a 5K or something, you're probably going to bring a friend. You're not going to go by yourself. So now there's automatically another fan that was created because when did a DJ throw a running club or a party during the day? So I thought it was pretty smart and cool.
I also feel like the key part of that as well is the fact that they're getting FaceTime and visibility around Diplo. I feel like that would be super important for them as fans, and they'll feel a deeper connection because of that. And it kind of reminds me of one in-person activation an artist we've done a deal with in the UK called M. Huncho did, where he had a new project coming out and he rented out a house in a part of London where most of his fans were from. He invited select fans to come and listen to the music in the house for the first time, with some of the featured artists in the house with him as well. Around the house, there were like different artifacts and clues that sort of alluded to things that were on the album. Obviously, this is a bit of a big budget optimization, but once you reach a level where you have that backing, that's the sort of immersion that you can create for your fans.
Yeah, now that you mentioned the house, there's like also artist in Puerto Rico. Her name is Right Now, like Right Now, and she kind of blew up now because like she was featured in the last album of with Bad Bunny, but she also did a little exclusive concert for Superfans in let's say the garage of her parents' house, and it's like her old neighborhood where she grew up. There's a term in Spanish called la marquesina. That's how you park you park the cars, and she basically threw a party in la marquesina, and then obviously people start recording it, and it went viral, so more people start showing up. But yeah, like in her street of her house where she grew up, her parents' house.
Yeah, I think these kind of in-person activations where you can get fans into one space, especially if you can get the artist there in the space, can be super effective. But again, this article I was writing a little while ago, I was talking to the label of Adrienne Lenker from Big Thief, and she had just released a solo record, and her fans are super fans. Like, her fans love her music. And so they decided to have a chat with some of the fans and see what it was that they wanted to do around the release. I don't think Adrienne was like massively available to come and take part in the events that they were arranging. So they had to think a little bit differently about what they wanted to do, and they looked at some data points around the super fans that they could see across streaming, across the social platforms, identified where there were some good groups of people that would want to come out and get involved in something. And then they just hosted listening parties, and they got people to come and make zines together and just sit and have a chat. And they made a ton of content out of these listening parties. So even though the artist wasn't there, and even though they would have had to pay, a bit of budget in order to hire a space, or, there's a certain amount of investment that goes into it, but they got months worth of content out of it, and they got all of these really cool kids working hard together and like filming stuff themselves and sharing things, creating tons of social moments together. So it is a bit of investment, but if you can be smart and use that initial investment to create things that are going to feed into the rest of your campaign, and especially if your superfans themselves are going to be in those campaigns, I think that's a really clever way to go about things.
Yeah, I saw like a similar kind of dynamic, not in terms of like content. Singer-songwriter, she realized that in her audience she also had other singer-songwriters as well, like more musician-focused fans. So she did a contest to create a song together that like other singer-songwriters would submit songs to her, and then whoever were like the top, I think like top 5, then would be in the album with her. And that was obviously, songs were like beautifully written, kind of like same aesthetic as her, like all of the artists themselves as well. I thought that was like very well done. But something too to kind of talk about, because I feel that obviously these are ideas that we're the ideas that we're sharing sometimes require a lot of preparation, right? And you have to have fans in order to have these activations that people are going to show up. That it would be nice also to talk about the day-to-day things, or how does it look like to develop an engaged kind of super fan community, which I'm sure from a management standpoint, but I'll let you speak to that too, because I think like that's important too. Like, how do you even get there to like be able to have people to show up to those things? So
yeah,
questions, but it's like,
I feel like transparently, the day-to-day stuff is very simple. It's really more about creativity and consistency, I would say. creativity in the sense that I feel like when you're trying to build an audience, especially an audience of superfans, people that genuinely care about your music, you're not then going to necessarily have like an excess of resources to hand. But if you're able to create moments for them that they can remember that they haven't had with other artists that they love or other artists that make great music that they like, then it's going to be easier for them to build a connection with you. And then when I talk about consistency, I mean the importance of consistent communication, because in the time that we're in musically, there's so much music coming out, there's so much social media content, there's so much everything. And if you're not consistent in your communication with the people that are really engaged in your music, unfortunately, as much as they love you, they may just move on. So you don't necessarily have to talk to them every day, but I would say the most important thing is figuring out a regular cadence that works for you and your lifestyle. That's super important.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about too. That regular cadence, like coming up already with even like what those content ideas or content pieces will be. Whether it's like, yeah, obviously there's like the low hanging fruit of like the creation process, right? Like behind the scenes, if you're creating, if you're recording something, but also maybe in your writing process or like the creation itself, if you're, in production, like why did you go this route versus this other sound, or maybe little mistakes that were good mistakes that, just like getting really creative with like analyzing all your process of like, okay, where can I pull content from this? I think also geographically sometimes too, if you know that your audiences are in specific locations, that maybe taking that in consideration as well. Anything that's personalized. But just really having like a really good sit down of like, okay, what is it that I'm going to be sharing? So you don't burnt out as well. Like you have that expectation of like, okay, I'm going to be sharing these 5 types of content pieces. This is going to be how I'm going to be engaging with them. So at least you can prepare ahead of time. And then kind of like evaluate, I would say like on a monthly basis, seeing like, okay, what's working, what's not working. And then, see what improvements you can make to maybe, whether it's like gamifying it or maybe, some sort of reward, for specific people, as you're kind of like engaging with those fans. But yeah, just kind of having a plan in place so it doesn't seem something that's like another task and, just like have burnout out of that as well,
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say as well, also, specifically in the early stages of trying to break an artist, I think a level of authenticity, or at least perceived authenticity, is super important as well. I work with a lot of artists that are trying to get their big break and they feel as though everything has to look super polished and super perfect at the beginning. And in reality, a lot of people looking for new artists, they like to go on a journey. They like to feel like they've met the artist when they're not fully formed, they're not completely the finished product. So sometimes there might be potential flaws that you see in your content or maybe flaws that you see in your music. But if you're able to turn that into a way to engage with your fans, that will really pay dividends going forward.
And then just thinking about where you're engaging with your fans as well, like what tips and advice would you have on identifying platforms and where your superfan communities are or potentially are or could be growing? Have you got any sort of platforms that you think work better than others or things that you've seen working really well?
So I would say sometimes it can be kind of genre specific, other times it can be a bit random. But in terms of superfans, for emerging artists, you'll find a lot of their superfans lingering in Reddit servers, Reddit pages for niche, up-and-coming music. You might find them in a Discord server. You might find them on platforms like Twitch, for example. And if maybe their audience is a bit older, some of the more traditional social media streams, or even some of the artists that I've worked with recently, a lot of their superfans, you only really see them when they do live performances. Like they might do an open mic, for example, and then there's like a group of people that come over at the end and say, I love everything that you do, please tell me when the next one is. So I feel like without making this answer too drawn out, it's more about sort of identifying who your audience is first and foremost, and then based on that, you can kind of work backwards and figure out where they're going to exist.
Yeah, I agree that it's very genre specific and very personal because it might be, I know like now also like Instagram, has like the broadcast channels. that you're kind of having maybe more like a one-sided conversation. But those broadcast channels, Discord as well, Reddit, YouTube. It all depends, like just like looking at like where do you have like the larger audiences and analyzing, like also there's like, like let's say like your regular, like now SoundCloud has like their royalty payouts, like that program as well. So just looking at individual, like let's say like where your social media followers are mainly at, or where do you think that they're conversing, and seeing what opportunities are, to like kind of hone in and focus on that specific platform where they're having those conversations.
Again, this article, I should have brought this article, I keep mentioning it. But something that came up about Discord, and I think we were talking about Fred again, or, like a really big artist that has a big community on Discord. But it had grown on its own. It wasn't anything that the label had set up. It wasn't anything that he'd set up directly. It was a group of fans that really wanted, they'd created a forum, they wanted to talk to each other, and it just grew and grew and grew into this platform that has now become basically kind of like a self-serving promotional machine for him. They're the first, if he feeds a little bit of information to them about a new release that's coming out, that's his promo done, that it just spreads amongst this fantastic circle. So there is a question of how much should an artist be guiding that conversation, and how much should they let it grow organically. And I think we've just talked about how to start, where to find those initial fans and how to get that conversation going. So I guess it's the ideal endpoint, isn't it, that you kind of are able to hand over the keys to them a little bit and just let them run with it. Yeah.
That'll organically it will happen, just like even like the Taylor Swift phenomenon. Taylor Swift. That was not intentional by any means. That's just my accent. but yeah, I could see that. But I think it's just kind of like at least like initially finding where your audience is going to live and where are they having these conversations. What do they prefer? What's their preferred communication method? And yeah, just kind of setting up a proper plan, for that specific platform.
And then, let's talk a little bit about the finances around this as well, which I think what is really important in this conversation is to note and understand and have massive respect for the fact that superfans are there because of loyalty and love for an artist, and in no way should that be exploited. However, an artist needs to make money somehow, and these fans are willing to invest and they're willing to spend. But when we're thinking about how artists are engaging with superfans, how cost-effective do you think it is to market towards a superfan demographic rather than just sort of more general social media marketing? Do you think it's a better idea to identify those superfans and really sort of target everything towards them rather than more blanket marketing approaches?
Yeah, I think that they both have to coexist, that you have to kind of balance it out. Depending on perhaps like where you are in your career, you can allocate maybe, like a little bit, let's say, saying numbers here, but maybe 70% of, and this is obviously might be, different for everybody, but maybe like 70% of your budget maybe is allocated to new audiences, but then making sure that once you get these people, let's say in your funnel, right, or in the bucket, or you're engaging with them, that at least you already have things in place of how you're going to nurture them, right? How are you going to treat them? What is that experience going to look like? What other content piece are you going to like be providing them? So I think there has to be kind of like a balance there. Just because, and that, like obviously like 70%, then 30% still marketing to those super fans that you may have, or the people that are already engaging with you, because those are the ones that are going to potentially spend a little bit more. And then also one thing that I kind of like had in my mind was like getting from it. I know that obviously being an artist, there's so many things that you have to do, from like obviously writing the music, and now you have to be a marketer and a promoter, and all these other things that you have to keep in mind. But at least now we have ChatGPT, and you can kind of familiarize yourself with at least a couple of keywords, of like knowing, hey, how much does it cost to bring a client let's say not a client, but a new listener in, based on your budget, they call it like customer acquisition costs. But hey, how much am I spending to bring in, somebody to engage with me to like through Meta, like whether it's Instagram or Facebook, just getting familiarized with that. And then also, how much are they spending? Like what is the average amount that they're spending? So then you can start to optimize, like, okay, this is the channel where it's working best for me, that it's cheaper. And as you continue to grow kind of like that super fan base, then it will be cheaper to actually sell to those super fans versus the other. But you kind of still need to create a little bit of awareness, because a lot of digital marketing, sometimes there's a lot of vanity metrics in there of like, oh, I got 1 million impressions, but how many people did you get through the door, or how many people bought the merch? So you still have to have a balance in that, I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like in an ideal world, one facilitates the other almost. So ideally, as a modern artist breaking through today, you would want to build a core audience of super fans that love everything that you do, support everything that you do. And then at the moment where those super fans reach a level of like self-sufficiency, like you referenced earlier, then you put a level of more generic traditional marketing spend and marketing support behind that to magnify it to a wider audience. Because one trend that I've seen a lot in music currently is that people want to be a part of community. When they see community elsewhere, that's enticing to them and they want to be a part of that. So if you can build that community first and then give yourself the platform to push that community in front of other people's faces, they're going to want to engage in that. So definitely agree with you on that. And then also, just to sort of circle back to the Fred Again case study that you referenced earlier, I feel as though, because I went to a Fred Again show years and years ago when I was at university.
I'm jealous.
And one thing that I realized was that even at the show, he did a really good job of building almost a world around his music and an identity around the people that listen to his music. And it felt like I was part of a secret cult that I didn't know about. And I feel like hearing you say what you said about that article makes a lot of sense, because it's natural that if you go to a show for an artist that you really, really love and you feel like you're part of almost a tribe of sorts, you're going to want to continue that conversation at some point and build some sort of institution to facilitate that conversation. So I just say that to say that even with an example like that, where it feels like it was just completely natural and just organic, he laid the foundations for that growth. So yeah.
And it kind of made you a super fan and makes you talk about it as well, which like that's the magic of like having super fans, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be promoting the music for you in a sense, just sharing.
Definitely a Fred Again super fan.
We've mentioned, and I don't want to get too deep into the data side of things, but we've mentioned sort of looking at data and things like that a few times. So when you're trying to identify who your superfan audience is, what kind of data points do you think are the most relevant to be looking at?
I would say for me personally, I first look at location, country, then city, and then age, just because when you look at age and you're able to see how old your audience are generally, it's easier to sort of figure out the best way to reach them, and also the best way to serve them. Because if your audience are primarily young children or young teenagers and you're an emerging artist, generally they're not going to have a lot of money. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is when you're trying to sell tickets. So yeah, I would say location and age for sure.
I think, yeah, definitely. And now also Google, if you have Google Analytics on your website, it has a lot of beautifully creepy information in there that can even let you know, like, for instance, for us as a company, we have a lot of people that are into green living. They're into photography. Like, there's a lot of little things that at least can let you know at least where your audience lives, obviously, or their interests that appeal to them. Obviously, you don't want to do anything that goes beyond, let's say, what your brand is, or perhaps like what you stand for, or if it's something that's not natural to you. But if it happens to align with your belief system, or perhaps things that you're passionate about, those are little data points that you can use in terms of like what sort of content, or perhaps things that you can be sharing about or speaking about a little bit more, because it helps you at least like with the content piece. But definitely, yeah, like age, demographics is really important. For I agree, for budgeting purposes, or even the type of, just having awareness of what's happening specifically in those regions. If it's something that is not, perhaps your fans aren't local, if they're in another area. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the general.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier as well on streaming services, like being able to, I think you can definitely do things around this on SoundCloud, and Spotify you mentioned as well, but being able to identify who your top listeners are and now have a kind of direct route of communication through those platforms to them.
That now through like the Spotify for Artists, you can see those, and now there's like a messaging that now you can message those specific fans. I think it's only for a window of like 28 days. But at least you have a communication channel with them, which is great that at least like Spotify is looking at that, and at least allowing artists to at least have a little bit of a communication touch point, through there.
Brilliant. Well, I've just got a couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So if you've got anything that's sort of bubbling in mind, any questions that you'd like to ask, start getting ready. We're coming for you. But what do you think is going to happen next? What do you think is the future of this superfan conversation? Do you think it's something that we're going to keep talking about and it's just going to keep being bigger and bigger and more important? Or do you think it's going to disappear at some point?
I feel like the term superfan will just continue to be redefined depending on the era of the music industry that we exist in. I feel like as I sort of referenced at the beginning of this panel, there's a new form of superfan emerging that is dedicated to an aesthetic or a vibe as opposed to just an artist itself. And I feel like due to advances in technology and whatnot, I think that's going to continue to grow alongside the more traditional superfan. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree also too with like, because like I know that's the buzzword today, right? There's like a couple of years ago it was playlist, user generated content. So now we have this new one. I think that it's going to be it's going to be an important part, and yeah, it might not be called that anymore, but it's just like serving a community, that you have a community, that you're building a community. And I think that that's also going to be pretty important, which I'm kind of curious too in terms of like now with like AI music, right? And all these artists that are AI artists and all this, that I think like that authenticity is still going to be needed, right? That maybe through AI they can come up with a story of who this character is and this and that, but I think that the authenticity that an artist can bring is going to be very important. So I think that whole building of community, it's going to be important.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a new concept, is it? We've had street teams and we've had fan clubs and we've had all of these sort of fantastic ideas for years and years and years. But it has just kind of come back into fashion recently.
That now this is the new way of what the street team looks like and the things that you have to do to keep the street team engaged, in a sense.
Exactly. And so how can we, what would be some tips for artists or their teams to kind of safeguard those communities moving forward? I think you mentioned a really good, very practical tip earlier, which is just get their email addresses somewhere in the conversation, somewhere along the line, get an email address. But yeah, is there anything that you'd recommend people do to just like make sure that they're keeping those communities close and active, and doing what we'd like them to do?
I would say trying to keep a healthy balance between online and in-person engagement with them. I think both are important, but I think too much of one, you're sort of missing a trick, because on the online side of things, it's amazing because a lot of people exist online today, specifically the younger demographics. But if you can't engage with these people in person, then you miss the opportunity to really connect with them on a more humane level. And that's how you build deeper connections with your superfans.
Yeah, I think my tip, which I love that too, in real, in real life kind of aspect to it. I think it's just preparation, like not getting overwhelmed. I know this is another task, or it sounds like another task that, you have to add to the checklist. But I think if you prepare yourself of like, okay, what is it that I'm going to be talking about? Where, like, start gathering that information. Where do I want to start talking to this audience? Where should I be talking? What am I going to be talking about? And having at least, like, if you're starting off, then okay, yes, this is the main topics that you're going to be talking about, but then how do you engage a little bit further? And that's when maybe the in real life experiences come in. Maybe you're giving things that are personal to that artist, specific to that fan specifically. How can you like reach out from the device, and start connecting, with those folks, and getting familiarized with, because yes, you're going to be putting out a lot of content, but then analyzing that content. How is it performing? And sometimes, like, whether it's like you getting familiarized yourself with like at least a couple little data points that are going to be important to you, that, like in our world, we call it the KPIs, right? So it's like, what is going to be important to you? What is important to you that can drive you to then optimize and go further into that direction? And sometimes, like, if you don't feel comfortable that you're a marketing expert, now there's ChatGPT. I'm sure maybe you have a friend of a friend that maybe is good at digital marketing or something like that can maybe explain it to you or walk you through what you should be looking for, as you maybe have a team or have a manager that can maybe help you out with this, essentially. But I think preparation, just kind of like, that's kind of like the key. Prepare what direction you're going to be moving, and just little by little, heading in that direction.
Yeah, and then constantly analyze and take stock and see what's working well. And I think, as we've mentioned earlier as well, just, using all of these opportunities to kind of gather content that you can then roll out that's really related to that community, that's going to really excite them when they see a picture of them posted or, at a show or wherever it might be. But yeah, just using all of the opportunities available to you. But right, we're going to open the floor to questions. So I'm not sure if there's a microphone running around, or I could offer mine out too. But if anyone has a question, if you'd like to raise your hand. Yeah? Go over here first. There's a microphone coming for you. Okay.
Hello, thank you for being here. At the very beginning, Cameron, you said something about fans not being drawn to a specific artist anymore, but more to like a general aesthetic. So I was wondering if you could please tell us more about that. That was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, firstly, I just want to clarify. I don't mean in the sense that the traditional superfan is going away. More in the sense that there's now a new variant of a superfan, if that makes sense. There's still, if anything, I feel like more than ever now, there's more people that are wanting to lean in and learn about the artists that they love and care about. But alongside that, there's also a growing audience of people that do not care about the artist transparently. They care about a specific vibe. So, for example, they might like chill music, for example, whatever that means. And they go out of their way to find chill music whenever they go onto a streaming platform, or even YouTube or TikTok, for example. And I think it's important not to negate those people as well, because at the end of the day, they also love music. They just don't have the same attachment to specific artists. So what I meant when I said that was, alongside serving the people that love music and love artists directly, we should also find ways to serve the people that want a specific type of music as opposed to an individual.
There's a really good example of this in London at the minute, actually, called goth hip-hop. And it's mad. Like, it's just it's these online communities, movements, just like all these different artists that are like really up and coming, but the fans are just going absolutely crazy for the scene as well as for the sort of the individuals within it. So yeah, like nurturing that on a genre level is pretty interesting. So goth hip hop, you heard it here first. But you had a question as well, yeah.
Thank you very much for your discussion. It's very nice. I have a question now about something that we didn't talk so much about the offer of the artist, because we do all these things to have super fan, to have fan, but also to convert that fan on money for the artist for a living with this music. So my question is, do you have any study case, for example, for an emergent artist who is starting his journey, and he has to find his audience and to convert this audience into fan, then super fan, and then the super fan are buying something. So what is the first thing that the artist can offer? I mean, is it only the music, the digital music? But we know that digital music is not so many paying the artist. So what are the other kind of product or offer, concert for sure, but maybe something else which is, I don't know, very easy to use. Maybe you have some study case, if you know what I mean.
Are you asking for yourself?
No, not especially for me, because I'm coaching different artists, and this is the
Okay.
kind of question they are all asking me. So I have some ideas for them, but I'm curious if you have other ideas also.
I think it's very obviously it's going to be very unique to each artist, and I think it's just a matter of getting creative of what does that, maybe that scene or that genre, what do they appreciate? Like what initially do you think from that artist are people gravitated towards to? Is it like, let's say, lyrics of what they write? Is it maybe some musicianship, or maybe the bassist is really badass, or what is it exactly that you already are gauging that's like, wow, they really like this about them, or this piece of their personality, and then kind of going in that direction of maybe, hey, if it's really specific, if they like their lyrics, then maybe, hey, I'll send you your favorite song, or, me as an artist, I'll write it down on a paper and mail it to you, because that's your favorite song that you have on my album or something. Yeah, it's just like, it's very personal. It's hard to say, but I think it's just a matter of like, getting really creative with what is it that it's like stands out from that artist, and what can you kind of like pull from it, I've seen some crazy stuff too. Like one of the gals, like her real life job is doing nails. So she said, hey, I'll make a free, they're like, she has like followers, and she's like, well, I'll make nails, I'll make you a set of nails. It's just like these little things that you can pull from the person's personality, or the band's or the artist's personality.
Yeah, and those could feed into some sort of merch strategies as well, some initial merch things. But I've also seen some emerging artists that are good writers starting Substacks and things like that, and getting their fans to just pay like £2 or £3 a month or whatever a subscription might be, just to read their stories and read their lyrics and things like that, which is quite an interesting sort of passive income that they can make on the side whilst like really engaging with people. And I mean, Patreon's a similar thing, but Substack is this whole other community world, like very community-based world. I'm seeing a lot of a very specific kind of artists, like folk artists, and people that are very lyrical, sort of working in that space. But that there's some opportunities like that can be quite interesting, just to bring in a bit of cash every month, to be able to fund like the bigger sort of merch next steps or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, got a question just here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a question about superfans. So, is now the only way to create superfans with like online social medias, or because you said that we have to keep a balance between online and in-person engagement, and I feel like for emerging artists, for like bookers and whatever, they be looking only at online numbers and not in-person engagements. So, is there other ways than social media to create superfans?
Absolutely. I mean, to your point about bookers and whatnot, one thing that I do with a lot of the artists that I manage is I put them on an open mic circuit, and they do as many open mics as they can, and through that they're able to develop superfans. Because I can't speak to other countries, but at least where I'm from in the UK, the open mic circuit has a lot of regular faces, familiar people that go to different open mics around London. So through getting my artists consistently on different open mics, they've been able to build almost a community through the open mic community. And that didn't cost them a thing, that didn't cost me a thing. And we didn't need the access from a booker. You just apply, you just reach out, and they book you.
Yeah, but I feel like open mics are like super niche, and there are only other artists like trying to promote their own music. So how can we create superfans when
I actually think that we are fortunate to have, like, let's say, like the DSPs and all these platforms, but when you really connect with somebody is when you see them live. Because like I've seen acts that when I see them live, like I am in like for life, and I instantly become a super fan, and you're gonna share it, and I'm gonna try to find them online. So maybe if you feel like you are doing shows, like I think the end game is shows at the end of it all, because obviously people are gonna come see you. They're gonna connect with your music. They're gonna invite a friend. They're not gonna go alone, or maybe they will, but like for the most part. So I think the end goal is to have more shows, totally, and then be very proactive in terms of like when you do perform, having a, even what in the mic, say, hey, if you want to find out my shows, go sign up over there in the table. Give me your email, get maybe some sort of QR code, like definitely have little touch points of like asking them for your email or like to follow you somehow. Preferably, my go-to would be the email, or having some sort of QR code that they fill out some information, or maybe you can even like ask them like, hey, if you you can have on stage, fill out this QR code, and I'm gonna give you a personalized something, like I'm gonna send you something, so at least like you're kind of bartering with them of like, if you sign up, you're gonna get this,
And also, just your point about open mics being niche, you're absolutely right. But generally, what you'll find is that a lot of superfans exist in the niche corners of society. So I would just say, be open to the idea. At least try it. If it doesn't work for you, then that's completely fine. There's other avenues that you can take as well. It could be a situation where maybe you just find certain venues that you like and that you have a connection to, or certain artists that you have a connection to, and just ask them if you can open for them. They don't have to be particularly big. But if they have an audience, then that's visibility for you as well.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is if you have potential superfans in a room, it is exactly that. It's about making yourself available at the merch desk after the show so that you can say hi to them, just let them get to know you in person. I saw a Coldplay thing a few weeks ago where their first ever fan, like they know who their first ever fan is because it's a guy that came to their merch desk at like a terrible first show that they did. And they invited him out to like Las Vegas or somewhere, and they put him on the big screen, and they were like, this is Steve, he's our first ever fan. But just like making that initial connection is amazing. And then a really good tip that I saw, I think we have to wrap it up, but a tip that I saw literally the other day at a show was on the merch desk. They had a QR code and it just said cute dogs. And so everybody was like scanning this thing, and it was just a sign up to a newsletter, but you were already there, so you did it. But it just said cute dogs, and everybody did it. So just being a bit playful, I think, is nice, but also just keeping in mind that you just want to keep a point of contact with all of the people in that room. So be that getting a follow on Instagram. We keep mentioning email addresses. If you can get their email address, then great. But yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I think we're wrapping it up now. But yeah, I'd just like to thank Jeanette and Cameron very much for their input today, and thank you all for your questions and your time. And I hope you have a fantastic Mama Festival.
C'était un dimanche soir, un dimanche glacé. J'ai descendu tous les étages, arrivé dans la rue, c'est là que je l'ai vue.